Saludos, mi gente. Welcome back to the Latino Dad Connection podcast. My name is Efrain Reyes, and I am your host for this podcast. One of the things that I want to share with you all today, I know there's a lot of things happening in our country when it comes to immigration, um, that directly affect me and my community due to, tearing families apart. And it's very sad to see. And one of the things that I want to remind you to do at this moment to always take care of yourself first and foremost. Self-care is just essential, especially in times of stress. If I can't take care of myself, then I can't take care of others. I need to make that space and time to do that. Find whatever works for you. One of the things that I enjoy doing is like learning more about how our ancestors, and when I say our ancestors or my ancestors, I'm talking about specifically people from Mexico, Mexica. Some people might know them Aztecs, knowing that within Mexico there's so many different also pueblos, right? That practice different things. But that's what I'm learning, about my own practices and my own ancestors, and I'm learning that they had a way of being more connected to the seasons of life, the elements, the way of that they viewed the world was a little bit different, right? And it's really cool to get to know this and really learn from maestros. I have been blessed to meet some incredible maestros, and today I get to chat with also another maestro that is also doing this type of work. He's also a mental health therapist. He works with men, he works with women, but he also integrates ancestral teachings and the ancestral way of looking at the world through the Tonalpoali. The Tonalpoali, or people might know it as the Aztec calendar or the sunstone, La Piedra del Sol. This is a way that our ancestors were able to read each day, um, and how that helped them to really have that intention for that day and understand the energy that is being presented from the season that we're on, the year that we're on, up to sometimes even the hour. So, with that being said, I want to introduce you to a maestro, a father, like I said, a therapist, a leader in the community that is using this to help his mental health practices, and he's also sharing it with other mental health professionals. So let's get started with our episode. All right, hermano, thank you so much for joining us in the Latino Dad Connection podcast. I'm really excited for you to be here, for you to share a little bit about your story, your practices, and how you're using ancestral wisdom and practices to inform your mental health practices as well. So we're gonna get into all of that, but before we do that, I always want to give you some time for my guests to introduce themselves, share a little bit about who they are, give a little conocimiento to the audience para que sepan un poquito de ti, hermano. So the floor is yours, hermano. Go ahead and share um, who is Jesus Solorio.
Sí, gracias, buenos días y primeramente, dando gracias a ti, ¿verdad? Dando gracias por invitarme, por la invitación aquí a compartir, to share, to talk about, traditional practices and integration of things. And I'm just really honored to be sharing space with you. I'm here in Ohlone territory up in Oakland, California, so I'm
Mm,
north from you, ¿verdad? En su
mhm,
reconocimiento aquí donde estoy. Y pues, ¿quién soy, verdad? Soy hijo de Jesús Solorio and Socorro Solorio Torres, my parents, right? Y my people come from Purépecha territory, from
mm,
Michoacán,
mhm,
but also from Spain. I have
mhm.
ancestors from both lineages.
Right.
My parents migrated to the U.S. Y pues soy hermano de 5 hermanas, Marisela, Irma, Nicolasa, Norma, y Sandra, y tío a lot to mention, but I love them all very, very much.
Are
Este,
you the only male? So you have five sisters?
soy el único hermano. I'm the youngest one
Mm,
de ese grupo.
wow. Wow, look at that. They had to get the boy, huh?
That's the story. That's the story, right?
You're the golden boy.
And
There you go.
como dicen,
Sí.
and my dad was very proud for sure, right?
Mhm.
Pero pues aquí, yeah, yeah. So uh, I'm the youngest, so I have a lot of feminine influence in my life
Mm,
from my
a
cinco
lot, a
hermanas
lot of
and
maestras in your life.
uh, exacto, a lot of
Mhm.
maestras and so that's been very integral también en my journey, ¿no? Y pues también dualidad, mi dualidad Vero, soy pareja, her
Mm,
husband, and a father. I am now a father of Ashkawitzin, and he's 5 years old.
mhm,
Um, y también integrated into my life in various ways. I would share también, especially since we're compartiendo around Tonalama, right? That Tonalpowali, that
mhm.
my name is Tlazotecutli. Was given to me by Maestro Chimalcoyot in Puebla,
Mm,
and that name, the basic meaning is hombre trabajador del corazón,
oof,
man who works
what a
hard.
strong name.
So
Yeah.
so that's a little bit about me. Aquí estoy and grateful to be with you, Efrain. Gracias, hermano.
Yes, brother. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that, all those relationships, brother, father, partner, and many more. Yeah, so I'm super excited to talk about how we integrate like the Tonampuali into mental health practices. But you're a therapist, right? You became a therapist, I
Yeah.
think, in 2012. I was reading in your bio. What really
Hmm.
inspired you to come into the mental health field and become a therapist? We don't see that a lot. First of all, we don't see a lot of um, male therapists, and now we don't see a lot of brown therapists, which I think is so
Right.
important to have. And on top of that, male therapists that are informed by ancestral practices, which is beautiful. So, first of all, what inspired you to become a therapist?
Yeah, I can't share that without sharing a little bit about my story, my journey, right? And
Sure, yeah, let's go into it.
¿verdad? And uh, I used to be in another field. I used to work in education in the social justice nonprofit world.
Mm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
and Without getting too much into that, I got into a stage of burnout.
mm,
I got into a pretty deep physical, emotional, and spiritual crisis, and I
mm,
was really overwhelmed. And
yeah,
I I connected to a Dene um, individual. Dene is Navajo.
mm,
Um, ahí por chanza, ¿no? Como pasan las cosas, right? We connected. They invited me to a sweat lodge. This was back in
mm,
2004.
mm,
And so in 2004 was my first introduction to any traditional medicine
okay.
or any traditional practice. So they invited me to the sweat lodge, and that kind of opened up this journey for me that I didn't really know I was in. It really introduced me to me in a different way. It opened doors to healing that I didn't know that I was looking for, that I didn't know
Mm,
that I needed at the time. And it wasn't just about this burnout, but it was about my journey. It was about stuff growing up. It was stuff, from my grandfathers and things like that. So, really discovering what we now call intergenerational trauma, right, as a
mm,
result of colonization.
mm-hmm,
So it brought me into this journey of reflection and took me, at the time to different ceremonies, and started connecting to Mexica practices or danza, which is more available here in the Bay.
yeah.
Um, and long story short, that got me really thinking about what I wanted to do, and so the idea of becoming a mental health therapist, kind of came in a vision while I was in a sweat one time,
Mm,
and so I started doing the process for that, not realizing, at the time, that I needed to finish my BA first. I kind of dropped out of college. I have a longer journey story that
Mm,
maybe we could talk about another time of that, but I dropped out of college. I didn't complete it. So at age 35, I went and finished my BA and then got back into grad school, or got into grad school, I should say. Um, and my intention in getting into grad school was also finding a place where I could try and uh, bring in indigenous and ancestral practices and integrate to mental health.
mm.
And that was kind of a tough journey because that's not really a thing that's accepted in the Western psychotherapy world in
Yeah,
some ways. So
yeah. How
with
do you
my
get
own
how do
healing,
you
my
get
own
certified for that, right? Like there's
right,
not a like certification, like yeah,
right.
things
Well,
like that.
and where's the proof, right? What they
Exactly.
ask, right? Where's the proof that this works?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of my maestros, Samuelin Martinez, he's a social worker, but also hombre de medicina aquí in the Bay Area. Um, One of the things he says is like Western psychology is what 300, 400 years old.
Mm,
Traditional practices 10,000 years old, right? And
mm-hmm.
and and we know they work because of experience. Maybe we haven't scientifically, written about it. But also también, these days like there's all this science coming out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Around like
There's more studies
benefits of
coming out.
sage, the
Yeah,
benefits of this y esto.
of a sweat
Um,
lodge and things like that.
right? So it's interesting. And so
They're
it,
catching
you know,
up.
the,
They're
it,
catching
it,
up to us now.
they are catching up. They are catching up, and there's danger in that, but there's also some really more acceptance to it. When I
Yeah.
was going to grad school, pues there was nothing written about stuff. There was one uh, maestro Duran who wrote about his journey, indigenous psychologist,
Mm,
and so in integration. So it was a bit of a challenge, pero aquí estamos, la medicina is powerful and the
yeah.
traditions are powerful and they've survived for many reasons, right? Um,
Mm,
so I'm just doing my best to try and integrate in a good way
yeah.
um, these two kind of opposite worldviews in some ways.
Yeah, brother. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing a little bit about your story and how you got introduced to what many people call the red road, walking that
Hmm.
red road, the medicina, into the sweat lodge, and how that experience really inform and transform the way that you saw life, right? The way that you wanted to walk life. And I think that happens a lot, for people that have not been introduced to like a sweat lodge or some traditional medicine like that. Um, just
Yeah, yeah.
congratulations and what an inspiration, brother, to say, you know what, I'm gonna go back to school even though I didn't finish. I'm gonna go ahead and get my BA and get my master's in psychology, todo eso. What an
Gracias. Hmm.
inspiration. I hope that people that are hearing that are thinking about going back to school get inspired,
Hmm.
to do that, because we do need more therapists, more mental health professionals, brown mental health professionals. So
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
beautiful. And then the aspect of like really staying true to your roots, right? Not reinventing the wheel, but like really understanding where our ancestors came from and what they did to really find that balance. Because I think that's what is about, right? How do we find balance
Hmm.
in our daily life, and whether it be like using sage or medicine or other practices to really um, cope with life stresses, right? and,
Sí,
and
sí.
integrating the Tonampuali, which I would love for
Hmm.
you to share if you can, like if you can like explain it for people that don't know what the Tonampuali is. Um,
Hmm.
it's a little bit complex, right? So
Right.
we can share a little bit of a like introductory of what it is, and then we'll go into like how do you use it into like mental health
Hmm.
practice.
No, sí, gracias. It's complex, and people do, 5-hour lectures to just an introduction on the Tonatawali,
Exactly.
right, and the
Yeah.
Shipawali and stuff like that. So basically, with that, and the way I've been taught, I don't know everything. I'm learning. It's part of my journey to continue to learn and integrate. the Tonalpoali, the sacred count of days from the Mexica perspective or the Aztec perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's what people call the Aztec calendar. You see it in many places. You see it in restaurants, in markets,
I
Mexican
have it tattooed
restaurants.
on
You
my
often see it.
I have it tattooed on my
You
shoulder.
have it tattooed. ¿Verdad que sí? Many of us do, right?
Very
And
very representative of the culture, you know?
see. And I'll say it's one of the indigenous cultures of Mexico. It's not the only indigenous culture,
Right,
but it's the culture that I've been um, more connected to just because of what I've had access to. And so
right, right.
it's a little different than the Purépecha culture, the
Mm-hmm.
Mayan culture, Zapoteca, and stuff. So I honor all cultures and we're all indigenous. We're not all Mexica, we're not all Aztec. It's
Right,
just what I've had more access to. Um, Pero
exactly.
básicamente, it's the year, right? It's the calendar, it's the count of days. And it comes with energías, right? Like for
Mm-hmm.
example, today is a Ome Kiawit day,
Kiawit.
and
Okay.
Ome is two. Kiawit is the rain,
The rain. Okay.
it's an invitation. The Tonalpoali, the way I see it, especially connected to mental health, it's an invitation to be more reflective on cycles and journeys and days. Like for example, today a beautiful reflection or meditation could be on the blessings of the rain, right? The rain
Mm-hmm.
comes in sprinkles, it comes in big storms, it nourishes the plants, the trees, the food that we eat. It also
Mm-hmm.
cleanses things away, clears things away. So um, if we're more intentional, I think my invitation is to be more intentional around the count of days and how they influence us, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier my Mexica name or my spiritual name. It's based on the day that I was born, the
Right.
year, the 13-day period, the month, and the day and the time of day that I was born, which was Makwili Ollin, a 5 Ollin, um, a movement, energía of movement. And so, and based on all those, then my name was given to me by my maestro, also with the different energías um, that accompany the days, right?
Yeah.
I like to
Yeah.
think of it as our own astrology or astronomy, right? It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
necessarily all celestial,
Mm-hmm.
pero it's like your kind of your day sign. What's your, I'm a Pisces, right? We all
Mm-hmm.
know that those
Yeah.
kinds of things, pero
Sagittarius.
¿verdad? So that's a very, very brief intro to that. And but it's like it's in a way, some people call it like our cosmic identities, right? Because our identities are so tied to the day that we were born.
Mm-hmm.
And then the days, every single day here is tied to a different energy, and it's
Right.
all about cycles and fluidity and cycles to nature, connected to nature. Um,
Right. Right. Yeah. Thank you, brother. How do you say eight in Nahuatl? You know eight?
uh,
You remember?
Chicome?
Chicome. So my
Chicuase.
Chicuase.
Chicome is 7, Chicuase is 8.
Okay, so I'm Chicuase Acatl, which is the
Okay.
reed or the reed. Carrizo, in Spanish.
Hmm, hmm.
And each one has its own teaching, right? So I was learning about this. A maestro here was telling me about my energy and the ability to also be that the carrizo when there's a lot of them together, they're very strong, right? So ability to bring in community and have that strong community, right? And other teachings like that. So we learn about these things, and as I reflect on it, it's like, yeah, that's part of what I'm doing here, right? Bringing in
Yeah.
that community, connecting people. um
Hmm.
y también, another thing I wanted to share. Yesterday, I was hearing somebody, and he was saying, "Can we just change the calendar to start in the uh, spring equinox? What if the year started in the spring equinox, right? Because right now we're on winter and todo. And the Mexica calendar starts around that time, right? I think it's March.
Yeah.
I don't
Mhm.
remember what day this year it is, but that's the Mexica, New Year starts around that time, and that goes into the Tonampuali, right? Like it accounts for
Mhm.
the sun, the movements of the sun, the movements of the moon, the earth. So it's a lot more complete. And there, like you said,
Sí.
it's not necessarily a calendar, but it's a count of una cuenta de días, right? A count of the days,
Mhm.
and each day has its own energy. So
Yeah, yeah,
as we move through that, we get to connect to that energy that day is bringing, reflective on the season that we're on, the year that we're on, the time of day,
mhm,
and all
mhm.
of these things, right? So you have
Yeah,
an offering, right, coming up that you're going to be sharing a little bit of this conocimiento with other mental health
yeah.
therapists and people that work in mental health. Um, yeah, I would love to hear more about the offering. How did this offering come about? What is your intention in sharing this knowledge and this wisdom?
Yeah, yeah. No, gracias, gracias. Um, you know, this is going to be the second year of doing this offering of offering it.
Beautiful.
I'm in the process of completing the first cycle with a group of. We started with 13
Mm,
folks, and work schedules and things change. I mean, it's a year-long commitment, so I think
yeah,
it's been a little bit tricky. So we're down to about seven now and stuff like that.
yeah.
But it's been a beautiful process, and the way it came about was, I think, as I continued to integrate the Tonalpawali and this knowledge within my own practice, just within my own daily practice, but
Mm-hmm.
also in my, work with individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and different people started asking me about, like, hey, it's cool that you do this, it's cool you do that. Can you share this? And I don't consider myself a maestro. I don't consider myself a person who is of high knowledge. I consider myself someone who continues to learn and
Mm-hmm.
just has kind of walked this walk and done this work.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of self-doubt, right? There was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like, no, ¿quién soy yo para ofrecer esto, para enseñar? Yo no soy acá
Mm-hmm.
all scholarly, toda la cosa. So, but that's my own, like, dudas and stuff like that that some of us carry, right? So
Yeah.
I was encouraged by a few folks to do something, in this regard. And so I offered it last year, and we had the blessing of having a few people sign up, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all been beautiful, beautiful individuals, mostly folks who work in the mental health field who are, um, you know, utilizing this as part of their own identity connection,
Right.
and healing, but also, like, this first year was mostly around getting to know it and developing a connection and a relationship. It requires a lot of discipline. It requires a lot of intentionality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because today's Friday, ¿verdad? Mañana sábado, and
Mm-hmm.
we just kind of the practice of just doing that is kind of automatic, right? But
Mm,
today is Kiawit, and tonight at 6:45 we'll start Sochit, you know.
mm,
And what energy is that this day is inviting me? I mean, typically, it's like Monday I go back to work, Tuesday, I go to work, blah blah blah. Pero all these different days invite us to have different meditations or different reflections, different
mm-hmm.
connections. And so I'm offering it again to start again with this new cycle that's starting up.
Mm-hmm.
13 Cali, which is going to start Marzo 11,
Mm,
is the
Marzo.
day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the idea is for therapists who really want to, I mean, voy a ser really honesto, right? De que, a lot of folks talk about decolonization of mental health and re-indigenizing mental health, pero I'm not trying to be judgmental, right? But what does that really mean, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To me, it means, like, really, like, looking at the system, but really developing an individual relationship with my indigeneity and my
Mm,
connection and my identity. And this is
mm-hmm.
just one way of doing it. I'm not saying it's the only way. It's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that it really benefits the folks that I work with, as a therapist myself. But really, it's a reflective year. And because to me, you know, it's around getting to know the system, getting to know my relationship to it, integrating into my practice, and moving in that way. Then I start to really, like, use it, right? It's like going to school, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you learn to start writing a little bit, and then numbers, and then math, and you build up, right? And this year-long process has been that. It's been a process of these individuals who I'm really blessed to be in journey with, of them
Mm-hmm.
getting to know the Tonalpowali and their relationship to it. And 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 they've in many ways have grown, and I have grown. So it's an invitation to reflect, to get to know it throughout the
Mm-hmm.
year.
Mm-hmm.
We would be meeting every veintena, right? The Tonalpogali has 20-day cycles, so it's
Mm-hmm.
veintenas. So we meet every veintena, reflect on the veintena, talk about how we've been doing it, receive a teaching on some of the energías, and really it's building community with folks who are also interested, because
Yeah.
it can be also very isolative to be doing this work in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
So um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm really excited. This first year has been really, really beautiful.
Mm.
And I'm excited to continue this journey again
Mm-hmm.
with folks. Yeah.
Yeah, about finding your tribe, right? And really, like you were
Hmm.
mentioning, connect to whatever indigenous practice that you feel called to do and to have. I think that Tunapoali is one of the well, I also, am learning and relate to it because it is also very it was kept on a huge rock, right? Where this is a
Hmm.
códice that was shared from our ancestors, right? And which is the what some people may refer as the calendario. I mean the calendario Azteca, right?
Hmm.
So it I think it's just about reconnecting to what I'm learning is reconnecting to the natural elements,
Hmm.
right? La agua, el fuego, el aire, earth, the seasons
Hmm.
of life that we go through, right? How, there's a start, there's a birth, and there's a death, and
See.
everything in between, right? And how we were able to connect to those energies each day. So yeah, it really takes, like
Yeah.
you said, a dedication, a practice, and a discipline for people to start reaping the benefits of this, right?
Mm.
Of this medicina. And it's a way of
See.
life,
Yeah.
right? It's not like, oh, pues, you're gonna take this. Yeah, no, it's like it's a
See.
constant learning. There's more and more. I think it's a never-ending learning, like you're saying, like I, if this was a school, I'm probably like preschool. I'm
Yeah.
like,
I'm in first grade, bro.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
apenas around some things.
Exactly. And there's maestros, that already are, ahead of us, and know
Hmm.
more and share that wisdom. I actually visited Teotihuacan this past winter, and I was blessed to be
Beautiful.
connected to a maestra over there, Sipakli Ocelot. Um,
Mm.
She was sharing a lot of this wisdom, and I just love learning, right? Talking about it, having people share about it, and it really reconnects me to who I am and my roots. One of
See.
the interesting parts too that happened in that trip was I have a lot of family in Mexico City. They always lived in Mexico City, so even though they're in Mexico City, oftentimes like this information in this cultura is not they're not even connected to it. So
Hmm.
we went
Hmm.
to Teotihuacan and we had like a beautiful ceremony and really connected to the land and to the teachings that the land was giving. Um, and towards the end, a lot of my family were like, "Wow, like I've never experienced like something like
Mm.
that where I go into a
Yeah.
place and with intention, with reverence, with openness and willingness to receive whatever teaching. And yeah, there was a couple of my family members that like got emotional and started crying, and I was like, this is what this medicina is about, right? Reconnecting back to
Yeah.
the elements, to the roots. Um, So yeah, how do you how do you see the intersection of cultura, like we're talking about, these practices like you mentioned, 3,000 years, or I don't know how many thousands of years old,
Right, right.
to now Western psychology, and having everything be like, peer reviewed y todo eso.
Hmm.
How do you see this intersection of these two worlds, and you're doing it with your offering, but how do you bring these two worlds together?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question, and I just wanted to reflect back on that beautiful story you shared, right? And
Yeah.
and and the beautiful, the power of like that reconnection. And sometimes what I've seen también is like, I mean, I think all humans, right? We take things for granted, right? Folks who live in Mexico City who have more access, right? And I say it in quote unquote,
Yeah.
more access to the templos, to knowledge, the medicine people down there. Pero, you know, the Western world has done a really good job at disconnecting us as much as
Mm-hmm.
possible from these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oppression, colonization has done that intentionally because they know how powerful the medicine is. They know how powerful these traditions are. And so, what's the best way to colonize people is to separate them from their truth, from their medicine.
Right.
And
Right.
so, we all have grown up in that particular way, in some ways hating part of ourselves, right? Hating or not liking or not acknowledging the importance of these ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sad to see, right, that many of us have direct access, but it's also really easy to understand why folks don't do it, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
part of that, right? And this is not a judgment on people because we're doing the best we can. Um, but then when we connect, like you had this beautiful ceremony, this intention, whether it's something there or even it's something here in the fire. I know you connect with hombres with the fire,
Mm-hmm.
and or a hike, like just like these reintroductions. These are really basic ways of introducing indigenous ways of being, connection to the elementos, being out in nature, doing a hike and stuff like that, or the fuego, or un círculo, un ritual, a ritual of some sorts. And I think these are the things that remind us, right? Why do people cry? Why do people have that feeling? Is because something in our DNA is being reawakened and connected. So it's really, really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the Western world is trying to acknowledge, one of the things, as you've mentioned, right, integration is, especially in psychotherapy, right? That's the work that I'm in, is, I mean, and we hear it everywhere, this concept of mindfulness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
what is mindfulness? In the true essence, mindfulness is a connection to our true essence and our true selves and our indigeneity.
Right.
Mindfulness is a colonized term. It's a colonized term of what we do and what our people have done all along.
Right. Right.
And so they find ways to name things, right? Without actually crediting the indigenous practices. I mean, most of the mindfulness practices in psychotherapy come from the Eastern, you know, yoga, meditation,
Right.
these types of indigenous practices. And so I think that's we're at this crossroads where there are elements of traditional practices that the Western world is acknowledging, and also like starting to like peer review them and study them and so forth. I don't get really into that because I'm not a like a scholar and all that, but I'm a practitioner, and I really
Right.
believe in practice, and I really also
Mm-hmm.
believe in naming our practices and naming them for they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not mindfulness. This is esencia. This is
Mm.
presencia.
Mm-hmm.
This is mine. This is our prácticas. And so I've done my best to, one of the ways that I'm trying to do is that language is really important, and learning, who coined certain languages, right?
Right.
Acompañamiento, to accompany someone, is actually the root of where the terms, holding space came from.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so acompañar, right,
Yeah.
is like now the Western way says holding space. Um,
Yeah.
so they do a really good job at finding our concepts and our traditions, and then extracting what they want and using them. And so my goal, I mean, and I know I'm just an individual. There's many of us doing this where we're
Yeah.
just we're trying to reclaim and
Right.
integrate, right? Because we operate in this Western world. I have a license. I have to protect my license, right? My license
Right.
says I do things a certain way, and I do things ethically, right? But I'm also uh, integrate these indigenous practices
Mm-hmm.
into
Mm-hmm.
the work. And
Beautiful.
so it's an interesting journey to be on, right? It's like we're straddling two worlds in some ways. And
Yeah.
I mean, like you were talking the other day, right, about Mexican American, right?
Yeah.
You know, and and the things we straddle, the things, the complications with it, the beauty of it, all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I can
Mm-hmm.
I can ramble on forever, but I think that um, the effort right now is to really, really claim and own what we do, what we have, what our medicines have been, and then do them in a respectful way, you know,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
which is what I try to do.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say the other one is restorative justice circles,
Sí,
right?
sí,
Restorative justice circles. That's like the new trend, right? That a lot
sí,
of organizations and schools are integrating, but like you were saying, they don't give credit where credit is due. Where our ancestors have been doing these círculos for thousands of
sí,
years,
sí.
and now we you get to rename it and write a paper on it and charge I don't know how much money to get trained, right? With you know, so
Yeah,
those are the things
yeah.
that it's like it's good that these practices are being introduced to the world, but also it's so important, like you're saying, to name them for what they are and how they are. Um,
Hmm.
one
Yeah,
thing that
yeah.
I kind of like, I don't know if I say if the right word is struggle with or just think about is introducing these type of practices to people, to organizations. You know, some people what these practices have been I'm not sure if the right term is like demonized or like saying like
Hmm.
you might be practicing witchcraft or you're calling the
Sí,
spirits or lo que sea, you know, not really understanding really what is happening. And I think that was my thinking before, and I think it was still a lot of people's thinking um, when these type of practices are introduced to the world, right? So I don't know if you have any words to share about that. I'd love to hear what is your perspective in you being a therapist and also you
hmm,
know incorporating these practices to inform and create your practice.
yeah. No, I mean I think that's a lifelong challenge and struggle, for lack of better words, like you said. No, we've been taught, that these practices are demonic, brujeria, all these kinds of things, um, and that's been colonization has worked its magic in many ways that way, right?
Mm.
To like disconnect us. And I think that as I think about that question, I think about like what language is used, and I think a lot about words and language,
Right.
and I guess I could use examples because that's kind of easier for me too sometimes. But when if I show up and I sometimes I'm called, I do like trainings for different institutions, nonprofits, stuff like that, or whole space, things like that, acompañamiento. Uh, if I show up and I just set up my altar, um, and I don't explain it, then there's this feeling of like, what is that, right? Um, some people might say, oh, there's candles, there's things there, and there's elementals, and it's beautiful. And some people might be like, whoa, okay, what is that?
Hmm.
And so while I might call it an altar, I have to be mindful and thoughtful. Here I am using the word mindful, even though I try not to, but I have to be thoughtful around how I am presenting to other people. And so I take the time as much as possible to explain what's there. And I
Mm.
won't use words usually. I usually don't, depending on who the crowd is, I might not even say it's an altar.
Mm.
because an altar could be representative of different things, and some people, you know, could be see an altar only as like something religious, and they might get turned off by what they see. And so I
Right.
say it's a grounding space. This is a
Mm.
grounding space.
Mhm.
And this is grounding space in particular is connected to the elements. And I
Mhm.
always have something that represents the water, fire, air and earth. That's
Mhm.
usually my basic altares, right? And
Mhm.
while I know it's an altar, my energy, my spirit, my ancestors know it's an altar. That word just could be scary, and so
Mhm.
I'm careful about even saying that, and that actually for some people opens up curiosity. Curiosity is, I think, one of the first steps to even reconnecting to traditional practices. Is being curious and not being scared of something.
Mm.
So that's the best way that I try to do it is really being thoughtful in how I explain things,
Right.
um, to not alienate, um, because that's what's happened to us. We were alienated, right? These traditions
Mm.
were alienated.
Mhm.
So I try to that's the best way that I try to slowly, and taking the time. And sometimes we don't have that much time, but if we spend a lot of time in that and in the introduction, I think that's a powerful medicine right there. That's a powerful teaching. Um,
Mm.
so that's the best reflection I have around that, and then just how it takes a while to introduce. Some people come with a lot of eagerness, right? But don't know, that it takes disciplina, it takes time. Teachings don't just come because you're looking for them, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and our Western mind, and I was like that. I remember that first time in that lodge, I was like, well, what else do I need to do? It's like Shashaja, my maestre at that time was like, hey, slow down, slow down. The
Yeah.
fire will teach you. What,
Yeah. Yeah.
what what's that mean? What the fire will teach you? What do you mean? It's like the fire will teach you. Slow down, talk to the fire. What do you mean talk to the fire? I mean, stuff like that, right? Like I laugh about it now, but I mean, I was like back then I was like, what? Now I'm like, oh, the fire.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
And
it
I
takes
laugh
time.
about it too because it's just such a different concept and way of living
Right.
that
Yeah.
I was not raised by. So now I'm like unlearning certain things and
Right.
relearning, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean having that connection with the fire? What do you
Hmm.
mean being in relationship with the fire, with the water, with the air, with the earth, with all the
Yeah.
other animalitos, and having
Hmm.
everything has a place, everything has and not just saying it, but really being with it,
Yeah.
right? And like you're saying, it takes practice. I think the other kind of concept that is westernized or just in terms of colonization is like the idea of arriving somewhere, right? Like, oh,
Hmm.
once I make it here, then I'm going to be
Right.
okay. And I think in indigenous practices, everything's a spiral, right? Everything is an ascending
Hmm.
spiral. Everything goes around in cycles. There's no
See.
beginning, there's no end. Todo va en ascendencia, in a spiral.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
that's like a different way of thinking about life, right? And I think, like you were
Hmm.
saying when you when you first got into that lodge, wow, okay, what else do I need to do? I need to arrive to that place. And it's like, wait, wait, wait.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to arrive. You already
Right.
arrived. You're here.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you know your essencia is here. So
Yeah.
it's just like
It's
once
beautiful.
again a different way of like of looking at life. And it takes a while. It takes a while to be around these teachings. Learning from these
Mhm.
teachings, getting yourself immersing in getting books. I have a book right here, that teaches me like about the
Mm.
all the the different days, Sipakli,
See?
Tehekal,
Hmm.
Kali,
Hmm.
and just little things. This is like for a first grader. This is for
Hey,
like a first grader, and I'm just like, okay, I'm
it's
learning.
it's what we need.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm learning about that, right? Like, what does it mean when I'm Escoat, the serpent? right? And,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
all these different words. So yeah,
Yeah.
brother, I think it's a lifelong journey, and I'm happy that you're incorporating and introducing these teachings um, to mental health therapists in a way that they're curious, right? And I take that
Mhm.
teaching that you just share about like the power of words and maybe shifting the words a little bit instead of an altar, calling it a grounding space, right? And what is a
Mhm.
grounding
Mhm.
space? You know, well, tenemos la agüita, tenemos el fuego, la vela, tenemos
Sí.
la tierra y maybe a feather, getting your medicina,
Mhm.
all of that. Yeah, I think that is beautiful because once again, sometimes I'm hesitant to, should I introduce this? Should I not? Is this too
Right.
much? I don't want them to think, you know, this is brujeria, or whatever the
Mhm.
terms are that people use. So yeah, I appreciate you, kind of sharing the conocimiento, hermano.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. No, and some maestros are saying, maestres, maestras are saying, it's time to share this knowledge more. It's time to share this knowledge. We've been
Mm-hmm.
hiding a lot, protecting it for good reason, but it's time to share it, right? Share what
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and acknowledge where you got it from, and
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge, that I don't know everything, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they're saying that. They're saying teach it, right? Um, my maestros, when I started to do this, I asked permission, right? Because uh, like I don't have a certification, right? Like you said, right? Because there is no certification in this in these ways.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but I reached out to my maestros. It's like I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Does this sound like I'm abusing the medicine? Does this sound like I'm abusing the tradition? And I got blessings, right? I was given permission to share the little bit that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I do my best to connect with maestros as much as possible with my maestros,
Mm-hmm.
and check in with the way things are going. Because I think that that's a really important thing around reciprocity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reciprocity is also acknowledging where things come from. And there might not be a certification, right? But there is also, I think, the right relationship and the right way to do these things. Is
Mm-hmm.
these things are taught to us. We practice them, we integrate them, we learn them, we develop relationships with them, and then we start to share them. And at
Mm-hmm.
least that's the way I've been taught. And
Yeah.
so, and when we share them, we give thanks. And that's why I mentioned the maestros that have taught me in different ways, as much as possible, because it's not their knowledge. It's just that's where I got the knowledge from.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And one interesting thing about cultura or the Mexica cultura, what I've learned is that they didn't have a lot of written books, or the books that were written by people that were looking into the cultura, not necessarily by them.
mhm,
Their way of teaching was verbal, right? Passing
mhm,
the in stories and verbal, right? Like, so you integrate it
yeah,
into who you are, maybe songs and teachings like that, right? So that's what we're still doing, right? We're still doing that with our maestros. Our maestros still passing down that teaching to us, because that's how we have
yeah,
it. That's how it has been done for generations upon generations, and now it's just we are the other part in that chain of knowledge, and it's not our knowledge to keep, or is not our knowledge to claim. It's really our knowledge
sí,
to pass on, right? It's pass
right,
on to our
sí,
um, hijos, to our sons, our daughters, so that they can know where they're coming from, right? So,
exacto,
with
sí.
that being said, I would love to like talk a little bit about how you are passing on that knowledge to your Witzin. Is that yeah? And that's hummingbird, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Hummingbird.
yeah. His full name is Ashka Witzin, and Ashka Witzin is like the one who embodies the energy of the hummingbird.
Mm,
Is his
mm-hmm,
full name, and he's a Kali. He was born on a Kali day,
mm-hmm,
which is the structure of the house, or
mm-hmm,
or, or a building. and he completed our Kali. Is the way I see that when he came to this world.
Mhm.
And he teaches me more than I teach him in some ways,
Yeah.
especially around presencia,
Mm.
paciencia, cómo explico las cosas, cómo hablo.
Mhm.
It's really easy for me to jump into the way that maybe I was taught, um, and I acknowledge, right, that my father did the best that he could, but he didn't have some of the tools and stuff, and he was also wounded, so he taught
Mm.
me with kind of more directness and that kind of stuff that I didn't really learn at the time. So I'm doing my best to learn from those experiences, then also acknowledge who he is and how he learns, so we can communicate. And it's not easy, right? It's a journey. I think getting to know him and how I can best guide him has been a really, really long journey and continues to be a long journey. Because once I think I figured it out, something shifts, right? He's always changing. Um, and so one thing is that he has grown up with the drum. He has grown up within danza.
Mm.
He plays himself, and sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he just wants to run around the circle and play with his Hot Wheels and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So what I've learned to do is sort of like allow him to be who he is and
Mhm.
not force any teachings on him and not force any things on him. When he wants to drum, he's going to get on the drum, and sometimes he'll drum at home and sometimes he'll do things at home and he'll recognize things. We we do our best, and I'm not saying we're perfect because we're learning. We do our best to acknowledge every as we have dinner what energia we are in today, and we talk about
Mm.
it for a couple minutes, and he really enjoys that. We have a calendar that has all the days, so he really likes it. And of course he likes it when it's a Kali day because it's his day,
That's
or
cool.
when it's an Ollin, it's my day, or Tekpat, my dualidad Vero, she's a Tekpat. So he really
Mm.
loves those days, but he asks questions,
Mhm.
and that's the way we do it. We just do it slow. We integrate it. We just make sure that we're always involved in community. Um,
Mhm.
our community also teaches him a lot. Our elder teaches him a lot. Our danza circle folks who are part of the Círculo teach him, are with him. And so it's just beautiful to watch, right?
Yeah.
I see that, and I see the way he absorbs things. And I am like, I cry because
Mhm.
it's things that I wish I had when I was younger that I didn't have because of immigration and disconnection to culture and different things, right? I just didn't have that. So I'm just honored and privileged that I can offer that to him, and that my compañera Vero is down with that we're doing it together. It's not just
Yeah.
me who's interested. We're doing this together. She holds the fire, I hold the huehuet, I hold the drum at our círculo. And so
Mhm.
he learns about that. He has his own poposhkomi,
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
one, and he lights it.
That's so beautiful.
Sometimes he lights it to get a blessing to watch TV. Like he'll light it up. He'll light the medicina, and he'll like bless the TV. He's like, okay, I'm gonna watch TV, right? That's
I
the way it's
love
his.
that. I
He's
love
owning it,
that.
right?
I love that. All right,
That's his connection to it.
that's his ceremony right there. Right. Hold on, hold on.
That's his ceremony,
Let
right?
me calm myself before I watch SpongeBob here.
Exacto, exacto. I mean,
I love
hey,
that. I love that.
he started doing that on his own. We didn't.
Yeah, exactly,
That's
exactly.
important to him. That's his ritual.
Yes, yes, definitely. That's beautiful, man. Yeah, that's what fatherhood is about. It's just about setting that example, right? Setting that
Yeah,
example, and they will follow. They will follow what they see.
right.
They will follow what they're curious about. So that's awesome, brother. I'm so happy,
Yeah.
happy to have that or to just hear that. Well, we're gonna start, landing the plane here, wrapping up this beautiful
Sí, sí.
conversation. I can definitely go
Ujú.
on and on, but I know um, that we're gonna close it out for today. So I would
Sí.
like to give you the palabra if you want to share any last words with the compadres, anything that you would like to
Ujú.
share, and then any places that people can find you, they can connect with you if they're interested in the
Gracias.
offering that you have.
Yeah. No, gracias. Again, te quiero agradecer otra vez por sharing your medicina with us, con los hombres, con las comunidades, ¿verdad? Los círculos. And you know, I'm grateful to be able to share a little bit. And the things that I like to say is because get asked a lot around how to do these things, how to connect, and the first thing that I just often offer is connect to somebody. You know,
Mm,
connect. It doesn't have to be about indigenous practices or traditional practices. Connect to someone that you feel comfortable with. Many of
mm-hmm.
us hombres in particular, we've learned that connections are not safe, especially
Right,
sometimes with other men, with con otros hombres.
right,
So
right.
who is out there in your community? Maybe it's a cousin, a tío, someone, a friend of a friend. Like just connect to somebody that you feel safe with, comfortable with, someone who brings you joy, someone who brings you laughter. Who are those people in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the essencias of these traditions essentially teach us. It's not about demystifying the Tonalpowali and learning all these things. Yes, that's part of it. But I think the presencia is about who are my connections, who what brings me joy, laughter, and how do I connect to these elementals,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And laughter and joy is an elemental.
Mm-hmm.
Where's my fluidity? Where's my agua? These things. So just really find connections, whether it's con los círculos aquí con Latino Dad connection or other spaces. There's more and more círculos popping up in different areas. Um, but really, where's your connections? Where's your connections, and
Yeah.
and and how can we build connections? That to me is the most important thing. Is las conexiones, um, and finding those good ones. Y pues, I have a website. It's ollintherapy.com, Ollin therapy.com. I'm on Instagram at Ollin Therapy. Y pues, those are, that's where I'm most active. I try to, my website's not super updated. I try to do that, but man, it's a lot of work. So I do my best, but I'm pretty active on Instagram. And that's a easy way to get a hold of me if you're interested in just talking or whatever, connecting in some way. Y otra vez, gracias, muchas bendiciones a ti, Efraín, y a tu
I
familia,
hear you,
a tus
brother.
comunidades. Yeah.
Placer Kamati, hermano. And then when is your offering gonna start? And when is like the last
Yeah.
day that people can sign up, or how does that work?
The reflection series is going to start February 26th. It's a Wednesday. It's at three
I see.
o'clock. I know it's hard for some people because it's during the day, but as a parent, I can't do evenings right now. So
Mm-hmm.
my commitment first and foremost is to familia. So I have to do these offerings during the day.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts February 26th, right before the cycle starts, because the idea is how do we prepare for the new cycle?
I see.
Um, and hit me up if you're interested, even if you have a question about it. Um, I'm pretty flexible with all the situations around it. So, um, yeah, right now we have a few people. I'm still looking for more, to sign up. We'll do it. The cap this year is going to be 10. And so I'm gonna do that as small as possible. I think smaller is more intentional.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, hit me up.
Beautiful, brother. Well, muchas gracias. Find my brother Jesus at Ollin Therapy. And thank you so much for joining us, hermano. And like we always say in this podcast, just show up, compadre. I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Órale. Gracias.